best of them, not the worst parts, the best parts. This is the best of the rest.
Hello, and we're the bad guys. It's what we do. Welcome to Best of the Rest, the show where we take a second look at comic book movies that were poorly received upon release, but only talk about the things we like and what the movie does well. It's sometimes a challenge, but always a good time. And this week, we are talking Suicide Squad. My name is Chris Logan, and I am joined, as always, by the man who can recall any comic book story with deadly accuracy, Andrew Williams. You ready for this one, Andrew?
I am.
That one was a play on Deadshot. Did you get that?
I noticed that. That was good. That was good.
That's what I look for at the beginning of all these episodes, is just props on my creativity for your nickname.
Chris, you're doing a great job.
Thanks, Andrew. That's the kind of encouragement I need. But hey, we are talking about Suicide Squad today, the 2016 movie, not The Suicide Squad, which was the confusingly titled sequel that came out earlier this year. So, Andrew, this OG movie, the 2016 movie, what is your history with the movie? Did you see it in theaters?
I did. I know I saw it opening nights. It was we were in the kind of throes of the aftermath of BVS here, 2016, just earlier, not even 6 months before this, we had that released. So people were curious in the aftermath of that, how this was going to look. So there was a lot of speculation. The trailers definitely created some interesting waves. They felt like they were a very different style, like a very different look, a different feel than what had come before. So
those trailers had a huge impact on the movie, which we will get to in a minute.
We will.
I also saw this movie in theaters, and at this point, the DCEU, I can't say I was a huge fan of it, but this movie looked different. This movie is very different than the DC movies that come before it, for better or worse. But it definitely had me intrigued. The trailer looked like a lot of fun. I saw it in theaters. We're gonna really break down all the positives of this movie. I will say my first impression, I think I walked out of the movie and I was like, that was 1/3 of a really good movie. Overall, I wasn't too hot on it, but there was something there. Now, in the years since, this movie, critically not well received, internet not well received. I mean, I almost never hear positives about this movie. Maybe somebody picks out a performance, something here or there, but by and large, the overall reception of this is just a flat out, it ain't good. And you know what? I think this is the perfect movie for our premise, the perfect movie for our podcast, because the movie deserves more discussion than that. All movies deserve more discussion than that. As we say all the time, a lot of people come together to make a movie. It's a miracle it even gets made. It is impossible for a movie to actually be good at the end of the day. Anytime you've seen a good movie, a miracle has happened. But there's stuff in here we're celebrating, worth praising, and that is what we're going to do. We're not here to review the movie or tell you how to feel about it. You probably know that answer already, but we are here to talk about the positives. The movie was released August 5th of 2016 on a budget of $175 million. There were some significant reshoots. It might have actually been a little bit more than that, but regardless, the movie made money. It was very profitable. It made $746 million at the box office. I was very surprised to see that. Like I said, the reception of this movie is what it is. BVS didn't have the best reception, so I thought kind of in my mind, like, the box office numbers will be trailing by now, but no, that's huge. That's like Spider-Man numbers right there.
Yeah, 746 million is like only like 100 million less than BVS made. Like it's more money than I think the eventual Justice League movie makes. So it made some money. That can't be denied.
Now, like we said, reception not hot. On Rotten Tomatoes, the critic score is just 26%, pretty low. Audience score is a bit higher, 59%, but still certified rotten by their standards. I mean, still not very well received. This movie was written and directed by David Ayer. Interesting choice whenever that was announced. He came to prominence as a screenwriter, probably most notably for his screenplay for Training Day, would later move into the director role as well. He's the writer and director of End of Watch and Fury. Now, End of Watch I've seen. Fantastic movie. I really enjoy that one, starring Michael Pena and the best actor out there, Jake Gyllenhaal.
Yep.
Andrew, I have not seen Fury. I own it. I haven't watched it yet. Is that worth visiting?
Absolutely. It's I think when he was announced, it was kind of in the aftermath of Fury's release, or it was building up to Fury's release. And I think a lot of people came out of Fury and, when they were like, yeah, David Ayer's going to make Suicide Squad, I think there was a genuine feeling of like, wow, fantastic choice. Like, Fury is kind of a World War II, some kind of a Suicide Squad. So putting those things together seemed like a good idea. Obviously, he's like Training Day is definitely probably the most notable thing he wrote, but he's been a part of a lot of different things and a lot of different stuff. Very varied filmography, a lot of very different types of movies. But leading up to this, I think the feeling of David Ayer doing Suicide Squad was pretty positive. I think for people that also weren't a fan of Zack Snyder's approach to that point, I think the idea of somebody else, kind of a different writer-director taking on something like the Suicide Squad, also sent a message that like this isn't going to be like those other things. So, for better or worse in regards to how you feel about that. But I think it definitely, like I said, I feel like going into this, the hype was pretty high.
Yeah, a movie like End of Watch could not be any more different than Zack Snyder. It's
Right.
Zack Snyder known for his special effects and big visuals, whereas End of Watch is almost a found footage movie. It's very gritty, very handheld cameras, no special effects. So yeah, you're right. Couldn't be more different than the previous entries of the DCEU. Now in post-production, we get a bit of trouble here. The studio is starting to panic over the reception of BVS. Audiences weren't super hot on it. It made some money, but not as much as they wanted. So they were trying to pivot with this next release, and they were worried that audiences were sick of the doom and gloom and somber tone, and they wanted to pepper this one up a little bit. And to do so, the studio actually hires the company that cut the trailers for the movie, which were a big hit. I do remember seeing those trailers. They had one set to Bohemian Rhapsody, and I believe another one set to Ballroom Blitz. And it was just a high energy, fun, comedic movie. That's kind of what they were selling with those trailers. So they hired this company to go in and recut the movie itself, which these recuts are not overseen by David Ayer. They're essentially taking the movie away from him and trying to force it to be something that it wasn't originally intended to be to his vision. Now, I will, of course, say I'm of the camp that a director should always be able to see their movie through. Movies are a collaborative effort. Studios and producers are there for a reason. But once you hire that director and you all agree to a vision, that should be seen through. I never like to see a movie get released and the director say that is not the movie I wanted, which is exactly what David Ayer would go on to say. The theatrical cut of this movie is pretty far from his original vision.
Yep. That's the general idea is that basically I think there's definitely a Guardians of the Galaxy influence on this. That's kind of what a lot of people started seeing with like the excessive use of pop songs and stuff like that. But there apparently comes a point in the production where the studio just decides to cut and move. And yeah, we end up with this final movie that Ayer now, even within the last few months, has repeatedly pointed out is not the movie he wanted to release, and is not at all really how he envisioned it going.
Yeah, I recently saw him praising James Gunn for another Guardians reference, clearly where they wanted to go, who, of course, directed The Suicide Squad. And he said, yeah, that's a great movie. David Ayer was a fan, but he also made a point to reiterate that, that first one was not my original vision.
Right.
But hey, that's all we have to talk about is that theatrical cut of the movie. That's what we're here for. We're going to dig into it, find the positives. Let's take a look at what happens in this movie. Amanda Waller is the head of an off-the-book government program known as Task Force X. Made of bad guys and supervillains, the task force is given the mission to stop the Enchantress, an ancient evil being that looks to destroy the world, along with her resurrected brother. If any member of the team disobeys the orders of their military leader, Rick Flag, an explosive implanted in their neck is detonated. Things take a turn for the worse when Amanda Waller is captured by the witch, and her only hope is to be rescued by a ragtag team consisting of Harley Quinn, Deadshot, Killer Croc, El Diablo, Captain Boomerang, and Katana. Also, the Joker is there. I wrote that synopsis and realized that for such a high profile casting and character, isn't too consequential to our main plot.
He is not.
We'll get to that. The first thing we're talking about is that cast. We got a true ensemble cast in every sense of the word, and they spared no expense for finding very talented actors to fill out these roles. What we're going to do now is start at the top of that list with the best casting, the best performance. We always highlight one actor or actress that goes so far above and beyond the call of duty. Their performance alone raises the quality of the entire movie. We recognize that person by giving them the Mark Strong Award. Andrew, who gets your Mark Strong Award for Suicide Squad?
I am giving it to Will Smith as Floyd Lawton / Deadshot.
That was a very quick response. I was locked in.
Was locked in, was ready to go. There's a couple of performances in this movie that I think are stepping up a little bit. But I just really liked seeing Will Smith in this kind of more in between role. Like typically Will Smith's your leading guy. He's kind of your hero.
Yeah.
To see him kind of slide into something that's a little bit more dubious, I thought was interesting. Also, he's Will Smith. He's got the charm. He's got the charisma. He's interacting and playing well off of the cast here. And it's all pretty good to me. And then obviously, even just on a flip side of it, if you told me even 10 years ago that there was going to be a day that Will Smith was playing Deadshot in a movie, I would have been like, Deadshot's never going to be in a movie.
Yeah, it just doesn't sound real.
Yeah. And so to get there, to have that casting and just so high profile, I think that's really cool. So yes, Will Smith as Deadshot is my Mark Strong Award for Suicide Squad.
I think he does a great job. I mean, we said back on our Men in Black 2 episode, what is there to say about Will Smith? He's just one of the best to ever do it. And so the fact that he takes on this role, which isn't a small role, it's one of the main parts of the movie, but it is an ensemble cast. He's not the lead of the movie. He's not anchoring the movie. Screen time wise, he's up there, but he might not even have the most screen time of the movie. It's pretty interesting you take the role at this point in his career, and he adds a lot of shades to the character. This character is anchored by their relationship with their daughter, and he plays those scenes extremely well. I agree that he crushed it. Over on our Discord, Greg from Texas made a comment about this movie. He simply said, Mark Strong Award for Suicide Squad is easily Will Smith. He did his best. Easily Will Smith.
Agreed.
I thought that was kind of a hot take, but you're agreeing with him. And look, like I said, it's a good performance, good casting, not who I'm picking. I feel like I'm taking the obvious Mark Strong Award. I think it's Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn. I think she is instantly synonymous with that character. Talking about, wow, I couldn't believe we got Deadshot on the big screen. In the 90s, if you told me Harley Quinn was going to be in a movie, I would have a hard time believing that. You could say that for most of these characters. I mean, Killer Croc is in a movie. Come on.
Rick Flag.
Yeah. Rick Flag fans were just rejoicing.
Rick Flag's been in 2 movies now.
Hey, crazy. But I really like Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn. I think she legitimately elevated this character to a whole new level. I mean, Harley Quinn's, it sounds funny to talk about a fake character's star status, but it's been rising over the years. She was instantly a fan favorite when she was introduced in the Batman the Animated Series from the 90s. And she made her way over to comics where she became a regular and a staple and just sort of elevated from there. The Arkham Asylum games were instrumental and, again, increasing her kind of awareness and her star power, or whatever you want to call it. And those games really started to transform the character from being just the Joker's girlfriend, just the sidekick, to being a character in and of herself. And I think that transformation is completed with Margot Robbie playing the role in this movie. Now, this series continues on. Margot Robbie has played the character 2 more times in subsequent movies, which we don't need to get too sidetracked talking about those movies, but they're great. I love all of her performances as Harley Quinn. I do think she gets better at it, and maybe not her getting better, but the character gets better written, a little bit better parts in those other movies. But still, from day one, she's continuously making me laugh throughout this movie. I think she gets the character. I think she plays her very well, very smart, very good shades to the character. I mean, I really can't praise it enough. I love her as Harley Quinn. At this point, it's one of those comic book castings where I could not imagine anyone else playing a live action Harley Quinn.
Yeah, I think you touched on it there for me. Like you said, you think she gets better at it. And I think she crystallizes for me as the character after this, but she's absolutely great here. She, like, especially kind of with the place they put the character in this movie, she takes to it with no issue. Harley, you're right, though, is definitely somebody that's like risen up a lot. And DC as a comic company too started putting a lot of stock into Harley at a certain point where she was one of their like top 10 selling characters for a while. Like she got elevated up. The only similar comparison I can think is similar to Deadpool. It felt like there was just this moment where like Deadpool turned the corner and suddenly he was everywhere in the comics and everything. Like Deadpool was suddenly the thing. And it might have been right after Wolverine Origins and people saw Ryan Reynolds, and then that was coupled with a push by Marvel. But this is a very similar moment where it just feels like right around that New 52 time, they just turned a corner with Harley and suddenly saw her as this viable leading character on her own without the Joker. And like you said, these things all add to it. They build to it to the point that now I'm still pretty sure she's one of DC's most popular characters. And again, look, I mean, the character barely existed 25 years ago. So it's actually a fairly impressive thing, especially in an age where new comic book characters tend to struggle so much out the gate, to have somebody not just take off, but become like an icon of the company.
Yeah, and Paul Dini, who created the character for that animated series and also was a writer on the Arkham Asylum games, had a really good run with her. I think it was right before the New 52, the Gotham City Sirens, starring Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy and Catwoman, and it's just a great book. One of my favorites out there. Very, very good. So yeah, good character in her own right. She came a long way. Good for you, Harley, and good for you, Margot, for bringing that character to life.
Yep.
And this is really part of, Margot Robbie is a huge star now, in large part to this role as Harley Quinn, but she was on the rise before this. Movies like Wolf of Wall Street and The Big Short.
She's in The Big Short for like 30 seconds, to be fair.
But it is a memorable 30 seconds. She was also in The Legend of Tarzan, which I didn't realize that was her. I really like that movie. I saw that like 3 times in theaters. It wasn't too well critically received. Andrew, did you see that one?
I did. You were the one propping that one up.
I guess. I mean, I saw it like with different people. I wasn't just, going back every morning by myself to see the movie, but I thought it was a lot of fun. It was a good way to update the character, and I just think it's a good adventure movie. Go check it out if you haven't already. I would recommend it.
Yeah, I think it's good. I think it fell a little bit under the radar because Jungle Book did so well, I think, with the human CG animal blend. And that one, apparently, it's Legend of Tarzan, it sat on the shelf for like apparently several years before it actually got released. Another one I actually really like her in, though, is I, Tonya, where she plays Tonya Harding. That's another great movie with her and Sebastian Stan and a bunch of others. That if you're looking for something that's another kind of meta narrative on somebody, that's another great one to check out. But yeah, now she's, like you said, she's instantly recognizable now, but Suicide Squad is kind of right at the cusp of that kind of explosion.
Now let's talk about Jared Leto as the Joker, who is very high in the credits of this movie, despite his character not having a lot of screen time. You go back to some of those re-edits and cuts of the movie, it's pretty widely accepted at this point that a lot of Jared Leto's work on this movie is on the cutting room floor. And he was more involved in the plot, and we don't have details of it. It hasn't been officially stated. There is no director's cut of this movie. Honestly, we likely will never see it. But again, all we have to go off of is what we have in this theatrical cut, what we saw. Andrew, I'm going to let you take this one first. What do you think about what Jared Leto is doing as the Joker?
He's making some choices.
Yes, he is. Now, I'll expand on that, but before we get into it, I do not envy what this man had to do coming into the role.
Oh, absolutely not.
Every single person that played the Joker is iconic. Even go back to like Cesar Romero on the Adam West TV show. that's iconic in its own way and cemented who the Joker is for a lot of people of that generation. And then you got Jack freaking Nicholson playing him in '89, which was just another absolute iconic role. And then Heath Ledger, again, I probably sick of me saying the word iconic, but they are all iconic in their own right. I mean, he won the Oscar for that performance, and it is insanely good. And those are all three very different takes on the character, but they all work for the story that's being told. And so now he's got to come in fairly recently after, just 8 years after Heath Ledger's performance and come up with a new take on the Joker and still try to hit that iconic status that people expect from the character. That is not an easy task.
No, not at all. And I mean, even including stuff like Mark Hamill's run as the Joker, even as a voice actor, like his voice is instantly synonymous with the Joker for so many people. So this is not by any means an easy thing to step into. I certainly, like, even if, I wouldn't want to have to do it. Like, I'm guys, I'm going to pass on this one. Not that I was asked, but, it's just an honor to be asked. But so you're already working in a tremendously uphill stance. And so that actually led to when they revealed his look for this movie, which is quite different than any Joker you've seen before. On one hand, I sort of understood it from the perspective of, well, if you've got to do it, make it your own. Do your own thing and run with it. Now, obviously, that look was before and after this movie has been heavily debated as to whether it was too much, too little, whatever.
Let me go on record. I don't hate this look. The hair is different. I like it. The slicked back hair. It's very reminiscent of, I'm not sure if the timeline adds up, but a few years before this, Batman R.I.P., which is one of the first Batman storylines I got into, written by Grant Morrison and with art by Tony Daniel. They redesigned the Joker for that book, and it's very similar to what we see here. And their intention was to make him scary again. He had been the clown prince of crime for so long and was just kind of a generic clown, classic Joker look that wasn't scary anymore. That's at least what Grant Morrison's take was. So they do this redesign where they slick back his hair. He dresses a little bit more eloquently. In that book, he has like a bullet hole like in his forehead. Like, it's a pretty menacing design. He slits his tongue in half. It's pretty sick, but it's pretty close to this design that we have here. And I don't hate it. It's different. I like that it is classic Joker in that he has been bleached by chemicals. The Dark Knight went the more realistic route of having makeup, but this Joker is, legit green hair, legit white skin, red lips, that clown acid that he falls into.
Yes.
So I like that they kind of stuck to that classic origin, but new updated design. The tattoos, I didn't think twice about them. I mean, I know people hate them. They're like, why would the Joker have tattoos? Like, I guess it's just hard to imagine him sitting in a tattoo parlor getting that done, but you can accept a guy fell into acid and bleached his skin white and his lips red. It's not that far to assume
you're not working very hard there.
Yeah. I mean, maybe at the tattoos before he fell into the acid, maybe it just, maybe that's who he was before. I don't know, but
I'm not going to judge.
It never bothered me. And, I've got a bit of an attachment to this look because the artwork for this show, I'm done up like this character, this version of the Joker.
Yep. So
this is kind of end of an era, I'm realizing, covering this movie, because we started with Green Lantern, which is what you are based off of.
Yes.
And now we're covering mine. And
Chris, you have something to tell me? Is this
the last episode? This is it, guys. Enjoy the rest of it. You're not going to hear. No, that is not true. We have plenty more.
We have reached the end of the rest.
At any rate, his look, it works for me. I get if it doesn't work for everybody, but if there's any problems with this movie or this character, I'm not pointing.
It ain't about how the Joker looks.
Yep. Now, he's got to thread the needle, find something different, still try to be iconic. Hashtag positivity podcast. I'm not crazy about that laugh. I don't know how that's where you end up trying to come up with an iconic Joker laugh. Everything else aside, though, I do remember that first trailer. People were hyped for him. They weren't hyped that first image with the tattoos, but he had that probably the most iconic line in that first trailer I'm not going to kill you. I'm just going to hurt you really, really bad. And people were feeling that. They were digging
Yeah.
that.
Because it's a much dark. I mean, the Dark Knight Joker is pretty dark, but it's just we're keeping that dark. There's a little bit more of a threat here, like you said. You're like sensing just that this man is kind of a culmination of a lot of different things, and so the performance, the laugh, you can debate that all you want, the look all you want, but I definitely agree that like if you're gonna pin this movie's flaws on something, the Joker's look is absolutely not what's holding it back. It's more, like you said, you kind of really talk about it's more like the fact the Joker is in this at all.
Yeah.
It's more of that's more of the question just based off what the plot is. But I mean, Jared Leto does get to briefly reprise this role later in Zack Snyder's Justice League, where they change the look again into something a little bit more, I don't know if you'd call it classic, but they get rid of the
Get rid of
tattoos.
the tattoos. He has long
They just
hair.
make it more looks a little bit more like he's playing more towards the Heath Ledger type thing. But yeah, ultimately, this role is, I mean, like you said, it's on the cutting room floor. I mean, all we know is that he was more involved. I remember there were original stories when this movie was prepping up to come out. The Joker was the villain of the whole thing. I'm hesitant based off the movie we got to think that is accurate, but you know, maybe it's out there. If we're mistaken or somebody has revealed that Joker plot, let us know.
Joel Kinnaman plays fan favorite Rick Flag. Audience has been clamoring for Rick Flag on the big screen. Here he is. No, we're making jokes, but you know what I do love about this movie is we said earlier, like, wow, I can't believe Killer Croc is on the big screen. Amanda Waller, El Diablo, Harley Quinn. Like, I love the concept of a Suicide Squad, like in the comics, or even the movies, of rounding up these lesser known characters, one-off characters that were created, you know, in some cases decades ago, then never used again, rounding them up and creating something with them and making you care about characters that really meant nothing before. It's such a fun concept. Right. And putting them in a movie is like, you know, one step farther than just putting them in their own comic book. Putting them on the big screen and a high budget adaptation, crazy. So yeah, Rick Flag. Let's talk about some of the casting here. Originally cast in this role was Tom Hardy, and he would have done it.
Nuts to think about.
It is. He had to drop out to do The Revenant, which, look, it's the right move. I said back on our, what episode was that? When did we talk about Tom Hardy? I said back on the Venom episode that I think his role in The Revenant is his best performance ever. It's so good.
I agree.
Jake Gyllenhaal was the next choice, but he turned it down. Of course, Jake Gyllenhaal working with David Ayer previously. And so they come around to Joel Kinnaman. I think he does a good job. The first half of this movie, I mean, when he first comes on, he's playing it very straight, very military, hard ass. And I was legit wondering, like, if we're supposed to like this guy, or are we supposed to like the villains and he's the antagonist of the piece? But by the second half, by the end, he really comes around. He starts to show more shades to the character. He kind of sees the world in less black and white by the end, kind of embraces the gray, which I think is kind of a theme of this movie. And I was sold on him by the end of this movie. I liked it.
Yeah, he's one of the few characters that kind of really gets a defined arc a little bit, just because he's obviously his involvement with Enchantress makes him a little bit more susceptible to what's happening. But yeah, he starts off very militant, very like, you know, I control all of you. If you mess with me, I'll just kill all of you. Who cares? So by the end, basically being like, I essentially need this group to have any chance of finishing this. So yeah, I think he's pretty good in this. I think he definitely, I think, relaxes into the role with his next performance as Rick Flag. But Joel Kinnaman is also like, I've liked a lot of the stuff he's in. He stars in a show right now called For All Mankind, which is like an alt history story about the space race. And he's actually really good in that. But obviously between The Killing, House of Cards, and he's in that RoboCop reboot they did as the main guy. He's been all over the place. But I think he's given one of the more interesting things to do in this movie. And I'm glad he was actually retained. I think he was one of the highlights that was a good idea to bring back. So, yeah.
Viola Davis plays Amanda Waller. Now, way back on that Green Lantern episode, I said that I really liked Angela Bassett as Amanda Waller. She plays the character in that movie. And of course, it makes sense they don't bring her back. This is a different continuity, different universe, different timeline. But if you're going to replace her with anybody, Viola Davis is a great pick.
Oh, yeah.
Now, we reference back to this Variety article. This is where I read about Tom Hardy being cast originally as Rick Flag. They also said that Ryan Gosling was the first choice for the Joker, which wild. That kind of reminds me of Heath Ledger being cast, and you're like, I can't even picture this. And then you see it and it blew you away. So I'm really curious what Ryan Gosling would have done had that come to a fruition. But as far as casting Amanda Waller, this is according to the Variety article and their sources. The studio's short list of actresses being eyed for the role include Viola Davis, Octavia Spencer, and Oprah Winfrey, whom sources say would be Warner Brothers' first choice for the part. Oprah Winfrey.
That is a choice.
That is a choice. Absolutely bonkers. And you know what? I think it could work. Like it's crazy. We haven't seen Oprah act in, as far as I know, in a very long time. But if you've seen like The Color Purple, like she could do it. She can be serious. She can be. I think she could be the hard ass that this movie is asking for of Amanda Waller. But man, that would be wild because since that time, since she was in The Color Purple, she is known as Oprah. She's Oprah. She's giving away cars. Oprah. She's high energy Oprah. So like, man, it almost breaks my brain to try to picture her in this movie. But that would have been wild. I wonder how much money they offered her.
I assume a lot, but and I'm curious if something like that, like, it's different. It's a different kind of thing. It goes against Oprah's kind of image. So you're curious if that kind of thing even really appeals to her.
Yeah, I don't know.
I know there's actors definitely like that, where sometimes something going against the grain speaks to them because they're so used to being, certain types of characters. So to get a chance to sink your teeth into something else has this appeal to it. But yeah, man, what an alternate timeline to live in. Yeah.
But we get Viola Davis, and we are not shortchanged for it. She is
by no means
fantastic. I mean, she could have, if you picked her for a Mark Strong Award, I wouldn't argue against it. I mean, she is a great Amanda Waller. Another one that gets to come back for the sequel, and the world is better for it.
Absolutely.
And what is there to say? She's great.
Yeah, exactly.
Jai Courtney plays Captain Boomerang. Another one of those characters that, man, I can't believe they're on the big screen and not in a Flash movie in the Suicide Squad.
We do get a brief Flash cameo here when we are introduced to him for the first time.
Yeah, and that is super cool, by the way. We'll jump into it when we jump into scenes, but the beginning of this movie where they're doing all these introductions and you just casually see the Flash, you just casually see Batman, not taking away from the stars of this movie, but just showing that there's a greater comic book universe out there. One of the things this movie does best, in my opinion.
I think so, yeah.
Now, Jai Courtney was previously in A Good Day to Die Hard. I think he's John McClane's son in that movie.
He is.
I've only seen the first Die Hard, and some would say that I can stop there. I'm sure I will see these sequels eventually. Hypothetically, let me ask you, Andrew, if on this podcast we took a break from comic book movies and we picked one movie from a franchise to cover, and we covered the Die Hard franchise, would we be talking about A Good Day to Die Hard, or would we be talking about Live Free or Die Hard?
We would absolutely be talking about A Good Day to Die Hard over Live Free, Die Hard.
Okay. Is that what would be the next?
It would probably be 5, 4, 2, 3, 1.
So A Good Day to Die Hard is the most recent one? It's 5?
And it's 5, yeah.
Okay.
And then Live Free, Die Hard is 4. And then it's because 4 I know gets a lot of flack for not having like the edge of the earlier films, but I feel like it's in the ballpark. 5 it feels like any of the direct-to-video movies Bruce Willis has made in the last 5 years. So, but yeah, that would be an interesting one to dive into.
Now, Jai Courtney also played Kyle Reese in Terminator Genesis. Andrew, I've seen every Terminator movie. If we covered one movie from Terminator, it would absolutely be Genesis.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Ooh. I don't know if I want to do that to myself again.
This is another guy that has like looks like a Jay Leno amount of vehicles here. Like it's
I was gonna say it reminds me of Taylor Kitsch. Like
yeah,
you're in these
like
like high profile roles, big franchises, but the one that you're in like didn't quite work out.
we like because he's in Jack Reacher, he's in Die Hard 5, he's in Divergent, he's in Terminator Genesis, he's in Suicide Squad. It's like they really wanted Jai Courtney to be a thing.
Yeah.
And it just didn't really catch on.
I do like him as Captain Boomerang.
Yeah.
I think he is having a good time. He plays that role super well. And it's such a wacky, I mean, he's the guy that throws boomerangs. Like
right,
it's funny though, because he's like one of the Flash's biggest villains. So like
I don't know if I'd say biggest villains, but he's definitely
like
a known
2 or
Flash
3.
villain. He is not. What are you talking about?
Okay, Captain Cold above him.
Yes.
Was the trickster guy.
The trickster.
Oh, yeah, there you go. The trickster. Who else are we putting above Captain Boomerang? I mean, he's
Professor Zoom.
Okay.
He's like number
Flash.
1.
Okay.
Any member of the Rogues is above him. So Mirror Master, Weather Wizard,
Isn't
Captain
he in the
Cold.
Rogues?
He's in some of them, but not all of them. No, yeah.
Listen, he's a top 10 Flash villain.
He's on the outskirts of top 10 at best. Don't get out of here with your tired stuff.
At any rate,
how dare you come on my show and talk about the Flash villains like this?
Listen, there are dozens of us, Andrew, who have been clamoring for Captain Boomerang on the big screen. God bless Jai Courtney for bringing him to life, making this character a ton of fun.
Jai bless.
Jai bless. Jay Hernandez plays El Diablo. Now, this is the first character we've come across that I'm actually not familiar with their comic book counterpart. Andrew, anything about El Diablo?
It's not really. He's somebody who's like drifted around a bunch of places. I think he's been in some versions of the Justice League, maybe. There's like an Old West version of El Diablo. It's not somebody I've got a lot of familiarity with.
Well, I really like Jay Hernandez's performance in this. He made me care about the character. And, again, a character that going into this, I had no idea who he was. And by the end,
right.
I sympathetic. I like the backstory. I like the performance. I love that he is trying to be peaceful and not be violent, turn his life around. I mean, I was on board every step of the way for this performance. Another really good stand-up performance in the movie.
Yeah, he definitely gets a little bit of not an arc really, but he's given like a motivation more. Like during several of the Suicide Squad's first skirmishes, he's not fighting because he's like, this isn't my fight and I'm not going to do it. And so it's a cool ripple to give to the character. And yeah, he gets to stand out with it.
I wasn't familiar with a lot of his filmography, but I did note that he did go on to voice Bonnie's dad in Toy Story 4.
He also stars as Magnum on the Magnum PI reboot.
Not nearly as prolific, Andrew. Why even mention that?
I don't know. I thought maybe. I thought it was above A Bad Mom's Christmas, that's for sure.
Adewale Akinoye Agbaje plays Killer Croc. Again, we keep saying it. I can't believe we got Killer Croc on the big screen. I like this design. I know a lot of people weren't super enthusiastic about it. And Killer Croc is a character that he never looks the same from one book to another. Probably the most famous version of him is like the giant anthropomorphic crocodile who's like 12 feet tall. That's what we see in the Arkham games. That's what's in Hush. But originally, he's just like a guy with a skin condition and just like really hard skin. And he's kind of scaly. Yeah. And so from that spectrum, a guy with dry skin to a giant crocodile, we've seen every version in between.
Yeah.
So
there's a lot of variations in there.
Yeah. And so they kind of just go right down the middle. He obviously looks beyond human, but he's not quite that 12-foot monster that we see sometimes.
Right.
So you could have gone that route. In the next movie, they do King Shark and he's just a CG shark. They could have done that for Croc, and I think it would have been fine. But I'm also totally cool with this design. Practical makeup. I'm always a fan of that. I think his eyes look super cool. I think he can still perform through the prosthetics and the makeup that they're doing. And not a ton compared to some of these other characters. Not a ton to do, but he gets his moment to shine. and I really like it. I will say, late in the movie, like he takes off his jacket, and he's kind of skinny. I don't know why they went like his body's real slender, which I thought was an interesting choice because he has a big head. But otherwise, I'm all on board for this design.
Yeah, it's a cool look. I think, like I said, there's a lot of room for variation with this character, a lot of room to kind of go with what you want, really. And I think this was a good way to do it because the whole idea of the squad, they're kind of not, there's nobody on the squad really that's like insanely overpowered. So I think if you're going for the scale they're presenting the team at in this, outside Enchantress, obviously.
I mean, Harley Quinn has a wooden bat, Andrew,
and a gun. So she's not to be messed with. She left that giant hammer behind.
I know. I
really
don't know why they. Yeah.
But yeah, so I think it works for this kind of approach they're taking of kind of this kind of scrappy group of villains that are going to try to take on Superman or Superman level threats at any rate. So yeah, I think it's a cool look. Works, like I said, practical. Always going to be in favor of practical when it makes more sense. And yeah, it's a cool design.
I was curious if I knew this actor from anything else. I didn't recognize his face, obviously, but I checked out that filmography. He's in Ace Ventura: When Nature Calls. He's Hitsu. He's like the military guy in that movie that ends up working with the bad guy. He makes the elephant sit on the car. It's very memorable part of my childhood. I can't believe that's the same guy. He also shows
Lost.
up in Thor. I haven't watched Lost. We've established this, Andrew. Was he a major?
Yeah, but other people know what Lost is. He's on 21 episodes of the show.
Okay, he's also in this little indie show that some people might have seen called Lost.
Yes.
He's also in Thor: The Dark World. I don't know who he is in that. Is it a major character? Do you know, Andrew?
He's one of Malekith's upper henchmen.
Oh, okay.
One of the guys who gets the curse, so he gets all buffer and fights Thor and still loses.
Got it.
It's also in G.I. Joe: The Rise of Cobra as heavy duty, so this guy's putting the rounds in.
Cara Delevingne plays Dr. June Moore / Enchantress. Got a range here. Now, this woman, again, I was not familiar with her, so I checked out that filmography and general history, and she is insanely talented. Probably mostly known for her work as a model. She's also a musician. She can sing. She played drums, play guitar. She's put out some singles, and she stars, in this movie in a prominent role. Renaissance woman. I was very impressed.
Yeah, she's got a couple appearances. I'd seen her in a few other things before this. I remember she was in a movie called Paper Towns, which was based off a John Green book that is not The Fault in Our Stars. That one kind of came and went, but I was just familiar with the author and his work, and so I just heard a lot about it through there. After this, she'd obviously go on to be in the Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets film. But yeah, an interesting choice, especially with the kind of weird, kind of not really otherworldly, but they definitely takes Enchantress into some weird places.
Yeah,
and I think she was
supernatural there.
She gets pretty supernatural, and she kind of has that look to her. Like if you told me she was an alien, I wouldn't really be shocked.
Yeah.
And I would be like, oh yeah, of course. That makes sense.
Kind of like Jessica Chastain over in Dark Phoenix. Like,
yeah, we're not doing anything to try to dissuade you from thinking she's just an alien. But yeah, she gets a dual role here, basically playing June Moon on one side and then Enchantress on the other side, and gets a chance to show a little bit of range there.
I think it's fun coincidence that Enchantress has like a crescent moon on her forehead.
The character's name is June Moon.
June Moon. Yeah, that's fun.
You got to wonder if that was on purpose or not.
Who knows? I think she shines a little bit more as June Moon, which is that's fun to say. She probably gets, she gets to show a little bit more range and emotion. And whenever she's Enchantress, she's kind of just, generic evil bad woman.
Yeah.
There's a lot of special effects kind of covering up there, but I definitely liked her as Dr. June.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Dr. June.
Dr. June Moon. Dr. Moon? I don't know.
June. You said Dr. June.
Is that wrong to say doctor than a first name?
I don't call my physician Dr. Rick. But
you should. That's hilarious. Ike Barinholtz plays Captain Hunter Griggs. At least that's what the credits tell me. I didn't know his name watching the movie. He's the prison guard that's kind of just a jerk to everybody for no reason. And we probably wouldn't be talking about him except that it's played by Ike Barinholtz.
Barinholtz, yeah, like
And a name I didn't know, but you know this guy's face. He's in
oh
a
yeah,
million things. I know him from Mad TV, so it's hard to take him seriously anywhere else. And granted, he's kind of comic relief in this movie. He's cracking jokes
right.
and supposed to be making you laugh, but a face that is hard to take seriously.
Yeah, it definitely is. I know him from Neighbors, both those movies that I'm in. He's in both of those. Obviously, Blockers.
Is he a cool guy on set?
Yeah, he's all right.
Super
Super chill. Blockers with John Cena and just yeah, the dude's hilarious. Almost everything he's in, he's fantastic. But it's his only job here is to just be, I mean, just kind of the jerk prison guard who is, I guess he kind of clues Joker into where the squad is going. So that's kind of his weird connection to the greater events. But yeah.
I love whenever they give Deadshot all these weapons so he can show off what he can do. And he's there. He's like, it's not a good idea, guys. And as soon as Deadshot picks up a gun, points it at him, and he's going,
yeah, like he's like, it's like, I don't know what I expected, basically.
yeah. Now, speaking of performances, we probably don't even need to talk about. Adam Beach plays Slipknot for all of 10 seconds. The movie really telegraphs that he's the member that's going to die. We don't get introduced to him until right before they go on the mission. Yes. But I don't know what to say about it. He's fine as Slipknot. I just want to, is just an excuse to talk about Joe Dirt. He plays Kick and Wing in Joe Dirt. And it's just funny to me. That's the same guy.
Yeah. What a range. What a career.
Change your name to Kicking Ass is what I do.
He comes back for Joe Dirt 2 the year before this.
Movie that, did you see that? Did you see Joe Dirt 2? I heard that it is
not
like impossibly bad. Like you would not believe how much worse it is.
It's one of those things that once the minute they announced it, I was like, how else are we expecting this to go? Like,
especially since it was exclusive to Crackle when it came out. Everybody remembers Crackle, right?
Crackle. Like, that's a candy bar, not a streaming platform. Like, come on. Ironically enough, both movies have the same Rotten Tomatoes score, though.
Really? I'll go to bat for Joe Dirt 1.
They are both 10%.
The fact that I was 12 when I saw it has nothing to do with
nothing at all to do with it. It's like the difference between watching Kung Pao as a teen and as a 33-year-old man, I guess.
Andrew, that is one of the best comedies of all time. What are you talking about? All right. Karen Fukuhara plays Katana. This is actually her film debut. So considering that, I think she does fantastic. She's wearing a mask for pretty much the entire time, and it's more of a physical performance, but she's believable with her action and her swordplay. Probably more known these days as playing Kimiko and The Boys.
Yep. I would definitely assume that's definitely more notable. But yeah, she's another one that we get like bits about her throughout the film. She's not somebody they spend a lot of time with giving us backstory. She's just somebody that kind of, if she had died, I would not have been shocked because she kind of gets the Slipknot treatment through most of this movie. But she does get a few moments where like they explain like kind of what her deal is. And things
super
like that.
Cool, by the way. So her sword takes the soul, it captures the soul of whoever it kills, and the sword is used to kill her husband. So she's got her husband's soul. She talks to it. Like they sprinkle this in throughout the movie, but like I'm on board with that. That's super cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
I guess we should say David Harbour is in this movie, but
yeah,
pre-Stranger Things, like, David Harbour, no one cared about. He just every now and then he pops up. He's one of the, I don't know, he works with Amanda Waller, I think. You just see his face every now and then. Yeah, it's David Harbour.
No, what's ironic is actually Stranger Things is the same year as this. Like, so It's like, it's legit. Like, I think it came out like a year before or a month before this. So like everybody saw that and was like, oh man, David Harbour's in Suicide Squad. Yep. For 5 minutes.
Okay, that is huge.
There's a lot of other bit parts, but we don't have
Scott
the time
Eastwood's
to go through
in
them.
there. Yeah.
I mean, Ben Affleck shows up as Batman, Ezra as the Flash.
Yeah, okay.
Like, it's really, even David Ayer, I think, has a cameo. Commons randomly in this. Like,
yeah,
just a weird grouping of people.
A stacked cast, some would say.
Who says that?
But let's talk about the movie itself, specifically the best parts of the movie, the best scenes in this movie. And of course, we're going to start at the top, at the high point, with our favorite scenes in the film. Andrew, in your opinion, when is this movie firing on all cylinders? What's the best scene in Suicide Squad?
My favorite, I think, sequence is when they are their goal when they first get dropped into Midway City is not seemingly to deal with Enchantress. It's to, unbeknownst to them, evacuate Amanda Waller from Midway City, because that happens to also be where, I guess, Task Force X's command center is based out of. But there's this sequence where they're trying to get to the top of this building to get to Amanda Waller. And it really is just like the squad fighting their way through. And I like this a lot because it really, everybody gets to kind of do their thing. You get the moment where El Diablo kind of finally unleashes himself and you see his powers and his, just how deadly he really is. And this whole sequence is cool. I like it better than the finale just because it feels more like the squad is doing something the squad should be doing. Because this would be the kind of Suicide Squad thing you do where they're not dealing with the threat. They're doing something tangentially related to the threat. And so it bleeds over into what they're doing, but that's still not their goal. That's a very Suicide Squad thing to do. Like, we're not going to send you in to beat Superman, but while Superman is fighting Zod, we need you to evacuate somebody from this building. Like that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And so that I like this a lot because it feels very Suicide Squad-y. But everybody gets their moment to kind of do their thing. Like you see how, lethal Deadshot is. Harley gets to do her unstable thing with, bats and guns, and El Diablo gets unleashed. Katana's awesome. So everybody's really kind of doing their thing. And I really just like it a lot. Like I said, it's a very Suicide Squad scene with them doing what they do.
Yeah, it's a great scene, a great concept. I mean, them just working their way up a building. I mean, movies like Dread or The Raid, the entire movie is based around this concept. Like, it always works. Just trap them in with the bad guys, fight your way through. What a great setup. Each character gets their time to shine, gets their own moments. We get to see them fight a lot of this. I don't mean this as knocking against the movie, but the generic bad guy at the movie.
Right. Which are the putties, if you will.
Yes, that's exactly what I have written down in my notes. That the army they're facing, they're basically just putties. They're pretty easy to kill. Harley's taking them out with her bat, just smashing their head. They got some like practical effects. I'm pretty sure they're just like stunt men covered in
weird bubbles,
like boba that you get in boba tea.
Yeah.
They look a lot like the bad guys in Resident Evil 0, if you ever played that, the little parasite leeches things. But at any rate, they're taking them out. It's a good time. They all get the time to shine. They get like quips. Yeah, you get Deadshot antagonizing El Diablo to finally get him to unleash. What does he call it? Phil Jacksoning him.
Yeah. Triangle.
Yeah. It's good. It's not what I have down as my favorite scene, but my favorite scene comes shortly after that. Once they land in the city, it's like this long walk towards the finale. And about halfway there, the movie just stops. The characters stop to go into a bar and have a drink. They've just kind of reached their breaking point. Amanda Waller has been captured. They got to go save her again. And they learn that Rick Flag is kind of responsible for everything that's going on because he is dating Dr. Moon and kind of responsible for Enchantress getting away and starting this whole mess. And so the person that's in charge of whether or not they live or die and has key mission is the reason that they're in the first place. So Deadshot is like, you know what? I'm sitting down. Do what you want. And then everybody follows and they all kind of just hang out in this bar. The movie comes to a stop. But I would venture to guess, and I don't have insider knowledge, but this scene, I imagine, is the closest to David Ayer's original version. I feel like if we got that director's cut, this scene would be in it untouched. I think this is what he was trying to get at. This ragtag gang coming to understand each other and bond in their own weird way. And that's exactly what happens. El Diablo gets to tell his Magneto-esque tragic backstory. His wife and kids were killed actually by him by accident, burning the house down. That's why he no longer, he's vowed to no longer use his powers because he doesn't want to hurt anybody anymore.
Yep.
We get some dissent amongst the team. Harley Quinn basically tells him, like, so what? We all got our problems. Yeah. And
own it.
Yeah, exactly. Own it is what she says. That's exactly right. And Rick Flag sort of just joins the team. He kind of quits being the leader. He's like, look, I've got to go save her. Y'all can come with me or not. He destroys the device that is capable of killing them all. And as soon as he does that, Boomerang bolts. He just runs out.
Yeah. So that was good. Got a good chuckle out of me.
Yeah. So each character gets to, just about all of them. Someone like Katana may have much to do, but just about all of them get to show their unique shades to the character, advance their character development. And it's nice little moment in most movie. It's my favorite part.
Oh yeah.
And then it ends with them walking back to the street, and you get the hero shot of them all walking in slow motion. And Boomerang meets back up with him. He just
randomly comes back.
He just went to get an energy drink or whatever he's slamming throughout this movie.
Yeah.
And he comes back and joins him. But yeah, it was. I mean, this movie, man, it's a tale of two movies. The first half and the second half. We'll jump into it, but this kind of hits right in the middle, and I think it works.
I agree. This is a really good scene, and I just didn't quite think it was long enough. Otherwise, I would have probably agreed. But it's a great look at the characters. Like, that's the moment where Flag kind of finally like empathizes with the team. Like, he gives Deadshot all the letters that his daughter has been writing him like every day that they were keeping from him. And so it's just really good character development. Like, it kind of comes all at once. So it really does kind of like slam the brakes on the movie as a whole. But it's such a good scene that really doesn't matter. Like, you're not watching this scene going like, all right, let's get back to it. You're almost the opposite, where you're kind of like, well, you know what? Let's just stay here for a little bit longer. But yeah, it's good. You get everybody's different shades. Like, when El Diablo is telling his story and you can see how personal it is to him, everybody else's different reactions tell you how they view things. Like, Harley is just kind of like, you need to own it. What are you doing? But Lawton's kind of like, hey, take it easy. Like, so you get all these different shades. But yeah, it's a great scene. And like I said, that segues right into our Ghostbusters finale. Another movie with a Ghostbusters ending. But yeah, it's great. It's fantastic.
Even Killer Croc. Even Killer Croc, because Harley is like, we're all the same. We're all pretty on the outside, but ugly in the middle. Except for you,
setting
Croc.
on the dryer.
Yeah, except for you, Croc. You're ugly on the outside too. And he's like, no, I'm not. I'm beautiful. And you know what? I love that. I love that. Yeah. The easy characterization for Croc is to do like that thing where he hates like the way he looks.
The Beast and Beauty and the Beast, don't look at me. Like,
yeah,
Phantom of the Opera type thing.
He's like, I'm awesome. I'm badass. Like, he owns it. I love it.
I love at the end when Croc is just like his happiness is just having a TV in his sewer, and now he's all set to go. It's like, it's all he wanted.
Simple man. Over in that Discord, we got some thoughts on this movie. I mentioned Greg from Texas. Hot take, I guess not so much, of picking Will Smith as the Mark Strong Award winner, but we also got a message from Toby over in the UK, who says, here's some positive thoughts with Suicide Squad, even though I dislike the movie a lot. Hey, easy there, Toby.
Ease up, man. Hashtag positivity podcast.
He says, I think Viola Davis is underutilized, much better in the Suicide Squad, but he's saving it here. She's a perfect pick as Amanda Waller, as well as Jai Courtney as Captain Boomerang, who looks like he's having the most fun out of the rest of the cast. I liked the casting of Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn. He does note that she does improve as the character, like we mentioned, or as she goes on in Birds of Prey and the Suicide Squad. But I think you're exactly right, Toby. I mean, the cast of this movie is definitely the highlight. Say what you want about the tone or directing and even the writing at times, but this whole cast is giving it all they have. And in most cases, especially the ones you highlighted, like Viola Davis, I mean, that is like, it's just perfect casting. Very good job. The strength of the movie
excellent.
Is definitely in its casting.
100% agreed.
And as always, if there is a comic book movie that you like that was poorly received upon release, we want to know your thoughts. We're going to read it on the episode, just like we did with these messages from Toby and Greg. You can hop into our Discord. There is a link in the episode description. In Discord, you can just hang out with us, talk about movies, talk about music, talk about podcasts. It's a good time, but there is a channel dedicated to sending your thoughts into the podcast. Alternatively, you can also just send us an email, bestoftherestpod@gmail.com. Let us know the movie. Let us know your favorite scenes, your favorite performance. And when we cover that movie, we are going to read your message on the episode. So we've mentioned a couple times, Andrew, this is kind of two separate movies stuck together, the two different tones from David Ayer's original vision mixed with that recut by the the company that did the trailer. Definitely the intro, the first third of this movie is where you feel that influence the most, that energy from the trailer. But you know what? I like it. It is, it clashes with the rest of the movie. That's its own problem. But that
Right.
first half of this movie, in and of itself, I think it works really well, and it is so efficient. We get these openings and these quick introductions to all the characters, and it gives us
Yep.
everything that they need to know. And all the main cast gets like their name on the screen, a few fun facts about them. They each get like their own fun font that matches the character,
Mhm.
and it just beat after beat, just rolling along like a train. High energy, lots of fun. I mean, I'm digging it the whole way through.
I agree. I think it's a fun way to approach a movie like this when you've got so many disparate characters. This is always the issue with team movies, where you've got so many new characters being introduced all at once. But I think the balance they find there is pretty good.
Yeah, you don't need these long, drawn out origins for every single little character.
No.
So I like, like Deadshot and Harley, their quick flashback show them getting captured by Batman. And we don't stop and see Batman's origin and his parents getting murdered. Like, he's Batman. Right. We know who Batman is. He shows up, He captures him. That's it. And even like Katana, we mentioned earlier, like she just peppered in. They're like, oh, her sword steals souls, her husband's sword's in it. She talks to it. That takes all of 30 seconds to set up. And like,
Yep.
You know who this character is. Let's go. And they take that approach to almost all the characters, just quick hits. They assume the audience knows the major characters. They give us just enough to learn who the other characters are, and it's all we need. They hit that balance very well. This is a 2-hour movie. It's a bit long in the runtime, but there's not a lot of fat, especially in this first half in these character introductions. They're all handled very well. I love in that the flashback to Batman capturing Harley, and she's driving with the Joker. This little scene, this little mini movie there is so good. It's right out of a comic book or an episode of Batman the Animated Series with the two of them driving. And Joker says, "We have company." And Harley is like, "Batsy, Batsy, Batsy, you're ruining date night." Like, perfect.
Yeah, classic.
That is, such little dialogue, but all the characters, it just nails it. The car goes underwater. Batman has to go down and save Harley. And even like drowning underwater, she pulls out a knife and tries to kill Batman.
Yep. It's good stuff. Yeah, it's a good, the Harley performance here really is great. She really understands it. She nails it. I do like the Batman stuff in this movie, like you said, because it's very like limited. It's not, we're not, the movie doesn't treat Batman showing up as some special event. Batman obviously does get the mid-credits stinger here to set up Justice League, but throughout the movie, he's just there. And like the Flash is the same way. They're just there. They're not, it's not derailing the movie to be like, oh, here's the Flash. What is the Flash doing here? He's doing this. It's like, nope. Boomerang just got caught by the Flash. That's it.
Whenever Deadshot walks down the alley and Batman just lowers behind him, it's the most classic Batman that Ben Affleck's Batman maybe ever looks. And that sounds like an insult to his other. That's not what I'm trying to say. They nail Batman in like 5 seconds.
Yep, they do. It's simple, to the point, and like you said, it's classic Batman. And there apparently was more Batman stuff. I'm curious if my opinion would change with more Batman stuff, because I do like the balance they find here of just being like, here's Batman, now we're moving on.
Yep.
But yeah, it's Ben Affleck doing it, so it's not we're throwing in a stunt double just to make it look like it's Batman. That's Ben Affleck in the suit, so doing a lot of work for us for some bit stuff, and I thought that was cool too.
Yeah, the Flash showing up to capture his arch nemesis, Captain Boomerang, his ultimate rival.
Top of the list.
He was robbing the bank. You get the lightning, which I love the Flash effects of this universe. But you get the lightning, it show up, and he doesn't have like a heroic punch or like a big moment. It's just he shows up, you see his face, he's captured. That's it.
And yeah, it was actually to Zack Snyder's credit, I think he shot that Flash scene while they were shooting Justice League in London. So I thought that was cool of him to be like, well, I mean, we've got Ezra in the Flash suit here. Let's just film the other half of the scene. No big deal. So yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, I love I mentioned like each character gets a little font, little fun facts. I didn't read it's up there pretty fast. I didn't get a chance to read all of them, but on Rick Flag, one of his bullet points was he golfs with a 3 handicap.
Yeah, that was the last one for his. Yeah.
Interesting choice to go with Enchantress as the villain. Now,
Yes.
Amanda Waller says like the whole point of Task Force X is what if Superman didn't have our ideals? What if he was the enemy? If not Superman himself, what about someone else who's just as powerful? I get that evil Superman's not going to be the villain of Suicide Squad. That's fine. You mentioned like Joker was rumored to be the villain. I could have seen that. Going with Enchantress is interesting. So she's kind of set up as if she's going to be in the team, and that's kind of how she's recruited. But when she escapes, she ends up being the target of the team. And I mean, Enchantress in the comics, is this? I'm not super familiar. Is this any kind of major villain? Is this something anybody saw coming?
She is a villain, and she has been sometimes portrayed as an anti-hero. She's typically more involved with like DC's magic side stuff. She does end up on the Suicide Squad at some point, but she's like a member of the team, and her unstable, like the Enchantress being unstable and not being able to control the Enchantress side, that stuff does come up in the Suicide Squad comics, and they flub one mission at least because of that. So this stuff, that sort of stuff does come up, but the idea of her being the big villain, not really.
Once she is like the big bad, once she gets her like ultimate mission, she creates the superhero movie classic Sky Portal to destroy all of Earth. But there's a lot of scenes leading up to that I really liked. The very first time Dr. Moon transforms into Enchantress, one of the coolest little effects I've ever seen. You just see like her hand on a table, and then Enchantress hand comes up underneath and grabs it and interlocks fingers, and then rotates over, and then she's Enchantress. Like it looks like cool. A little magic trick. Yes, such a cool little touch there. And then whenever she finds a host for her brother to bring him back, she's like in the mirror, and she reaches out of the mirror and grabs this guy, like total like horror movie stuff.
Yeah.
I thought that stuff was pretty rad.
No, yeah, that was all very cool. And the stuff with her brother is interesting too, just because like there's a scene where like he's in this one person, but I guess his form requires multiple people. Yes. So he like collapses on a subway, and this dude comes up and gives him mouth to mouth because they're trying to bring him back to life. They think he's dead, but then he like grabs that guy, and he grabs like 2 other guys, and then they like all like roll like over into a human tumbleweed. Yeah, onto these railroad tracks where they like emerge as a singular being, and then he like messes up a train real bad.
Oh, I love that scene though. The subway train is gonna hit him, and he just holds his hand up and like literally cuts through the center of it like butter, and like the camera's there with him. It's super cool visual.
It's similar. It's like a live action. There's a scene in Invincible, a very disturbing scene in Invincible that's similar, where Omni-Man does that with his son's head.
Jesus. And
you see a bunch of people on the train suffer the effects of it. In a cartoon, folks. It's so graphic. But yeah, it's a similar idea. Just you see this train just like I said, almost melts around him, and then he comes out as this giant bit of a brick house look here. But yeah, he's looking pretty gnarly. I do really like the scene at the end when El Diablo and him basically have their fight, where like at this point the squad has encountered the Sky Portal. Sky Portals, man. Every movie, Sky Portal. Everyone gets a Sky Portal.
The ultimate threat.
Oprah in this movie. Everyone gets a Sky Portal. But so El Diablo tries to just shoot fire at him, and it doesn't work. And he like launches him, and so El Diablo like gets pumped up, comes back, turns into like this weird like fire god,
like Aztec looking
like
thing.
Aztec looking fire god, and like morphs into this thing and just starts, and in this form he can fight this guy, not just like survive, but like overpower and fight this guy. And it's a very cool visual because El Diablo is like that transformation is just like you see hints of it throughout it, like they're teasing that maybe there's something more there, but then boom, he just like blows up, and I was like, that's dope.
That Sky Portal happens at 41 minutes. I took a note of the time because, like I mentioned, this intro is very efficient. At 41 minutes, we get our ultimate threat All the pieces are in motion. The team is assembled and they're on their way to the city. The Joker is on a mission to spring Harley Quinn from the team, and we get an ultimate villain with the Sky Portal. Like everything is set up in 41 minutes, and considering how big this cast is and the story
Pretty
being told, very impressive. And it's done in a very fun way. And it's I don't mean this as an insult. It's kind of a long music video. The movie opens with like a version of House of the Rising Sun. We also get Sympathy for the Devil by the Rolling Stones, Paranoid by Black Sabbath, Seven Nation Army by the White Stripes, Without Me by Eminem, all in the first 45 minutes of the movie. I took a note when Eminem came on. I was like, how many pop songs have we heard all in the first 45 minutes? And then we get like maybe not another one until the very end where you get Bohemian Rhapsody. So
there's a couple others, but no, yeah, it's very much apparent that the first 40 minutes of this is definitely working off of that trailer vibe. We're working in the pop songs. We're working in kind of the more snippy, snappy cuts, edits, the dialogue, the quips. But that second half kind of very much is like a different movie. It's a lot more straightforward. The energy kind of changes. Yeah, it really is a tale of two movies. Not too dissimilar for what ends up happening with Justice League in that regard.
Yeah. Most of the Joker story, at least that is told in the theatrical, happens in the first half of the movie. There's some flashbacks with Harley and their abusive relationship and how they came to be and stuff like that. But as far as the concurrent story, it's Joker trying to spring Harley. He sees this as an opportunity to get her out of prison since she is, well, out of prison. And his goal is to find a way to defuse that bomb in her neck and then spring her from the team. And I really like the scene where he goes, I guess the guy that like developed the bomb neck thing, his team pulls up to the entrance and they're like, you're not on the list. Like, oh, we just need to drop off this package. And they give the guy like a basket.
Like a fruit basket or like a.
And as soon as he gets it into the little booth with him, it blows up. And like the Joker giving you a gift that blows up, that's Joker. That's Joker. Classic Joker. And then once he gets in the facility, I love this little bit. He goes to the scientist who's on the other side of glass, and to get in and get him to do his bidding, he just holds up a tablet, and on the tablet is a video of a woman who's saying, please just do what they ask. And of course he does. And like, that's all the information they give us, but we can assume like that's his wife. Joker's captured him, he's torturing her to get this guy to do what they want. But it's told so efficiently. Like we don't have a scene of him capturing the
scene's
wife.
Less than 2 minutes long. It's very efficient.
But it tells it everything you need to know so well. It is very good storytelling. It totally worked.
Oh yeah.
Now, once he does have this ability and he defuses the bomb in Harley's neck and he springs her from the team in the city, his plane is immediately shot down, or his helicopter rather. And then Harley escapes and almost immediately rejoins the team. And then he's presumed dead. And like his part is done with the movie. It's why I didn't mention him in the synopsis, because like
until the end,
until the end, literally the very end.
It's very much a situation where like you, and I'm not saying this in a negative way. I really don't mean it is, but you could have cut Joker out of this movie and the plot would not have changed. That's now is that speaking to the changes made to the film? Because that seems to be Ayer's implication over the years, is that the Joker was a much more integral part of the film. Because when you're really talking about that, you cast Jared Leto to play the Joker in a role that amounts to 6 or 7 minutes of screen time. He's not a major part of this film, and don't get me wrong, we definitely know there's Joker stuff on the cutting floor, but it really is something where it's like, how different was this movie? Now they've said there's a novelization by Marv Wolfman, a legendary comics writer, New Teen Titans, everything, that Ayer has said is closer to his story. So maybe I'll have to violate my personal code and buy a movie novelization for the first time.
Whenever we start covering novels on this show, we will.
Well, I'm curious. Maybe we ever come back to this with the extended cut or something. I can try and force myself to read through that.
We made the joke about Slipknot earlier, how like the movie telegraphs he's gonna die. Like the whole team gets these long introductions, long backstories, and then literally like as they're leaving prison, one extra guy shows up, and this is Rick's dialogue to introduce him. He says, "Here comes Slipknot, the man who can climb anything. Wonderful." That's it. That's
To the
Slipknot.
point.
Even he's like not excited about him. And as soon as they make it to the city, he tries to make a run for it, and they set off his explosive, and his head blows up.
I like it's that he can climb anything, and it's just all he's doing is like grappling hooking from building to building. Like it's like so he's Batman without the rest of the stuff.
I guess you have to have somebody. You can't call it the Suicide Squad and not suicide someone. So
right. I mean,
it's so obvious it's going to be.
The second movie, I think, finds a good way to do that and incorporate it into the plot.
Just cast 50 people. So
yeah, you have cast 50 people and kill half of them. But spoilers, folks. But no, there's a bit the beginning of the new one. I think is a masterclass in like catching people up to the concept. But yeah, this is just. I definitely agree that Slipknot's only point in this movie is just to die. That's the only thing he's here to do, because it's literally the only thing he does after sort of climbing up 2 buildings.
In the finale of this movie, it's not #positivity podcast. It's not the most exciting final fight. I think we would both agree that there's better action scenes earlier in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you're taking down a girl who has a sky portal, it's just the same old song and dance. But I do like some moments leading up to it, especially her using her magic to make them see their greatest desire, their future that they could have, or she says that she could give them. So Deadshot sees himself killing Batman, which is really cool. I really like what Harley sees, because she gets like the picturesque family having kids with the Joker, who is just played by Jared Leto right out of American Psycho.
Yeah, like slick back hair, suit, everything.
Yeah. And it's a nice little snapshot of, again, the movie doesn't spend like 30 minutes explaining the abusive relationship of Harley and the Joker and how she's never going to get what Shirley wants and he's just using her. But little snippets like that shows like her true desire juxtaposed with how he's actually treated by her. And it's done very well. Like efficient is something I keep going back to. Like there's little snippets that are 5-10 seconds long that just say everything you need to know about these characters.
I agree. It's a good little snippet, because for her, that really is what she wants. Like the Joker marries her and they have this like, it literally starts with her hitting like the normal setting on like a dishwasher. Like that's the first little snippet of her fantasy. And I like, though, that
I don't get it, Andrew. What's the significance of hitting a normal?
It means that the dishes aren't that dirty.
Oh, okay.
You can just hit the normal setting. You don't have to go heavy duty.
Okay, thanks for explaining that.
But I like how, and then like Flag sees himself with June Moon, and it's like a normal, like healthy relationship. But I like that El Diablo is the one to snap out of it, because like he sees his wife and his kids alive, then kind of snaps and he's like, well, no, you can't bring them back. They're gone. That's what I did. So he snaps out of it and he like runs up to the team, and he's the one that kind of brings him out of it too, because Deadshot is like, I killed Batman. And he's like, you don't want that. He's like, you don't actually want to kill Batman. Like, so he's like actually the one that like pulls them all out of it.
Yeah, I do like they kind of address. I mean, if you think about the concept of Suicide Squad too seriously, especially with Harley being there, you quickly go like, she's just a normal person. Like she's has the abilities of a gymnast maybe, but she's just a girl with a bat. What can she really provide? And if you're thinking that, of course, I'm going to say it, you're watching the movie wrong. But the movie,
like a lot of this team is like that too.
Like the guy that can climb anything.
Yeah, you got the guy. You got Boomerang who throws his boomerangs. You've got Flag, who literally is just a guy. You've got Deadshot, who's got fancy guns. Like this really isn't a team. Like El Diablo and is one of the few people on this team who actually has powers for the most
Killer
part.
Croc. I mean, he's that super
Killer
strength.
Croc, yeah.
He can swim really fast.
And he eats people.
But I like that they kind of address that Harley isn't that powerful, because she like hits Enchantress with her bat and it does nothing. She goes, uh-oh, sorry. But she does get the hero moment. She's the one that acts like she's going to switch sides so she can get close enough to Enchantress and pick up Katana's blade and cut her down.
Cuts out Enchantress's heart, because that's the thing that Waller was using to control her originally. And that's like what they'd established. Oh, this is how we have to beat her. So she gets close, thinks she's going to turn, but then takes the giant sword, cuts her open, and rips her heart out. Temple of Doom style.
I also love that they kind of, like I said, they kind of address Harley, like not quite breaking the fourth wall, but just kind of address head on, like it's kind of funny that she can't actually do much with that bat. And then they also do it with, Amanda Waller was captured by this ultimate villain and she like
Mhm.
ties her up, but doesn't kill her. And then like after they take down Enchantress, like Amanda Waller comes walking up and they just ask, how are you not dead? And like, I'm kind of wondering the same thing.
Well, there's a point. This actually, when Enchantress like activates the weapon and it's like tearing apart the world, that David Harbour says at one point, he's like, how does she know where this is? It's a secret facility. But then they cut to Waller like all clued in and to Enchantress's like
reading her
web
mind.
or whatever. Yeah, that was the implication I took, is that she was pulling this information out of Waller, which is why I assume she wasn't dead.
All right, but when I'm done reading a book, Andrew, I throw it in the trash.
You don't throw it out the window. It returns to the earth in that case, Chris.
It's made of wood, so I placed it in the wood so it could be with its family.
Exactly. After about 80 years, it will return to whence it came.
But they take down the villain and they only get time reduced from their sentence. They don't get to go free at the end of this. So they all end up back in prison, but they do get kind of last demands. Deadshot gets to have visitation with his daughter, which is nice. We get a scene of that. Croc gets his TV, which is all that he wanted. Harley gets a bed because they've been making her sleep on the floor for some reason. And then like the very end of this movie, a SWAT team breaks in to spring Harley. And of course,
it's Joker.
The SWAT member that has Joker written on his helmet takes off his helmet to reveal that he is Joker.
What an interesting bit of foreshadowing.
And that's the end of our movie, except for that mid-credit scene that you mentioned where Bruce Wayne meets with Amanda Waller and she hands over some information on metahumans that she's been tracking. And what he does with that information, we've got to wait till the next movie to find out.
Which was over a year later.
What a tease.
What a tease.
Any last thoughts on Suicide Squad, Andrew?
It definitely is a tale of two movies. It's a bit of a bummer in that regard, because you really can see that there's like two battling visions here, which again rears its head again a year later with Justice League. But there is a movement. There obviously has been a hashtag release the Ayer cut movement that's happened. It has not gained quite the steam that Zack Snyder's did. And so I would be hesitant to think that we'll ever see the initial intended version of this movie. And like you said, that's kind of a bummer. You hate to see a director not really get to see something through to the end, especially after all the work that goes into these. But I think if you look past that and kind of see the movie as it is, I think there's plenty to enjoy here. It's a likable cast. The cast has chemistry. They work well together. There's fun action sequences, and you get another Sky Portal.
Who doesn't love a good Sky Portal?
Add it to the punch card. We're getting close, guys. We're going to get a free one soon.
And not to steal some of your thunder for a minute here, comic book expert Andrew Williams, but as an adaptation of the Suicide Squad, I think it does a pretty dang good job. If you had never read a Suicide Squad book before, you just saw this movie, you get everything you need to know. They got bombs of some kind. Sometimes it's a planet, sometimes it's a caller, but they will be killed if they don't carry out this mission. And the team is made up of low grade villains for the most part.
Yeah, the best Suicide Squad run by most metrics is John Ostrander's run in the 80s. He gets a nod here. The building that Waller is at the top of is, I think, the John F. Ostrander Federal Building.
That's fun.
And then he actually physically appears in the sequel. He's the doctor that puts the chip in Michael Rooker's character. So I like that the movie acknowledges his influence on this, because John Ostrander, probably one of the more underrated comic book writers of ever, because he's not a name you hear brought up very often, but he was good, very good, especially when it came to taking things like potential B, C, even D-list things and just treating them like they were a big deal. He has a pretty good run on The Spectre. He has a run on Martian Manhunter I really like, that came in the aftermath of Grant Morrison's JLA. But his Suicide Squad run is great. It is. They have nice volumes of it out now digitally that I know you can get. It's probably all on the DC Universe app, I think it is, that has all their comics on it. But there's definitely some stuff pulling from that, with the idea, especially with some of the sequences here, like I said, where it's kind of, we're not really dealing with the main threat. We're kind of a side to it, but there is fun to be had here. And as an adaptation, I think it does nail that dynamic. Obviously, What we're being presented with is very much a Suicide Squad situation. Them getting involved in the final conflict of this is not by design. It's more just how it ended up happening.
Right.
And that's also very classic of the team, too. If we end up involved in something bigger, it's rarely because that was intended.
Yeah, this movie definitely brings the concept of the Suicide Squad to the mainstream. Well, regardless of the reception might have been, people are now aware of the team. And there's been a lot of adaptations around that time. And since then, we've talked about the sequel. There's also an animated movie called Batman Assault on Arkham that came out a couple years before this in 2014. And then they re-released it when this movie came out. That is a really good take on the Suicide Squad. I don't know why they didn't call it Suicide Squad. They tried to liken it to the Arkham Asylum games, but it's really not like those games at all. But I really enjoy that movie. I know they made another animated Suicide Squad movie called Hell to Pay that has like a grindhouse feel to it. I haven't checked that one out yet, but I've also heard good things about that.
And we got a video game coming up. Suicide Squad versus the Justice League. So now we get to really test the mettle of can the Suicide Squad fight Superman?
The answer will finally be answered.
No. Just kidding, folks.
That does it for us for Suicide Squad. Like I said at the top, I think this is just such a good movie for our concept. There is a lot. This is my first time rewatching it since theaters, and I had written it off. I mean, I off the top of my head, I really couldn't tell you a lot of high points. How we tried to have a conversation
parts
about
of this movie. Whole parts of this movie I did not remember. Like,
yeah,
I really
enjoyed.
had gotten. Yeah.
Yes, especially that first half, but even sprinkled in throughout. I mean, both of our favorite scenes, we both acknowledge that the first half is pretty good, but both of our favorite scenes come from after that. So
yeah,
there's definitely plenty of good stuff sprinkled throughout. Cast is great. It's at the very least, base level, worth watching, in my opinion.
I agree.
Andrew, I have great news.
Do you?
I do. We have our first international review of this podcast. A few episodes back, I've been pleading with the world to lead us a review on Apple Podcasts, and many of you have. We've been able to read them on the various episodes, but up until then, all of those reviews have been coming from the US. And you know what? That's cool. We super appreciate it, and we are going to ask you to do it again. If you're listening to this and you haven't left us a review, head over to Apple Podcast. Not only leave a review for our podcast, but every podcast that you regularly listen to is something that is quick and free and, dare I say, fun to do. And it helps the podcasts that you're leaving a review for. It helps with algorithms, help us get discovered. And of course, we just like hearing nice things about us. And if you do leave us that review, we are going to read it on the episode, even if you live anywhere else in the world. If English isn't your first language, don't feel like you have to leave the review in English. I will read it in whatever language you're comfortable with. This particular review comes from the UK. This was left by Toby M124. And coincidentally enough, this is the same Toby that sent us their thoughts on Suicide Squad. So Toby, you're all over this episode.
This is your episode, bud.
Thank you for the review. This is what he had to say. Positively marvel us. See what he did there?
Haha.
Do you like positive vibes and critically panned movies? Best of the Rest is the best at both. Even in the worst movies, these two will find that golden nugget and will always come up with a good point or two in movies that I wouldn't have given a second thought about. Very fun podcast that deserves all the best. Thank you, Toby. You know what? You deserve all the best.
He does. Thank you.
And Toby is in that Discord. That's where he left us the message about Suicide Squad. And he even educated me a little bit, this dumb American that I am, because his emails are from Toby from the UK. But to find that review, I had to go to the Great Britain version of Apple Podcast. And Andrew, I didn't know the difference between those two, but he broke it down for me. And so if you want that kind of geographical and political and education, jump into our Discord. That's what it's all about.
Mm-hmm.
Learning new stuff about the world. There's a link in the episode description. We would love to have you there.
So many lessons to learn.
And remember, maybe not every movie is great,
but all movies have greatness.
Thank you to Mark Benavides for singing our theme song. Follow him on Instagram at NotThatMarkAnthony. Thanks to Mitch of Depressed to Impress for the music. Check him out on YouTube and twitch.tv. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend. It's the only way we're going to grow, and we certainly appreciate it. And follow us on social media at BOTRcast. Thank you. Hello, and so that's it. What, we're some kind of best of the rest podcast? No, I couldn't help it. I don't want to use that though. We're some kind of hashtag positivity podcast. And their intention was to make him scary again because he had been the clown prince of oh my God, that's hard to say. He had been the clown prince of crime for so long.
So he's like actually the one that like pulls them all out of it, and then they, you know, what's the term I'm looking for?
Team up.
Yeah, I thought there was a funner word for that, but no.
They assemble.
Assemble. Sure.
They join forces.
Join forces. They I don't know. I was trying to come up with some reference and I lost it. So they can't all be winners, folks.
Is what we're gonna do. We're not here to review the movie or tell you how to feel about it. You probably know that answer already, but we are here to talk about the positives, the best of this movie. I was trying to work in of the rest. It didn't work. How do you remember? I gotta start all over because I don't remember where the hell I was.
Yeah.
Woo! Woo! This movie. Okay.